Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Adobo and Avocados. And this time I'm back because last week, was it last week or the week before? I can't remember. But last time I was away because I had to be in a different appointment. And so we had Nicole with a different guest called Lina, but not this Lina.
Not this one.
Not this one. It was a different Lina. But yeah, I'm happy that I'm back again. And this is gonna be a good episode. But yeah, before that, I'll introduce the people that I have here with me. With as always, I'd like to introduce first my amazing sidekick.
Like a well-oiled machine. I'm
Right?
Nicole van der Hoeven. Hello. We're a little rusty because it's been a couple weeks since we were together.
Yeah,
We
we've
are
lost
happy to
practice.
have another Lena to the stream. I mean, we've had a good experience with Lenas in the past, so we totally expect that to continue. So,
Hopefully, I can keep it
welcome,
going.
Lena. Yes.
Yeah, so welcome to the show, Lina Deatherage. Hopefully, I pronounced that right. But this is the first time that we've all met each other. And it's great because I really like it when people recommend amazing people to be part of our guests, and Lina is one of them. So if you've watched the show and you know someone who would benefit or who would really like to be our guest, then just let us know because we always like it when we speak to new people. But yeah, I guess first off, Lina, would you like to introduce yourself? What is it that you do? And what do you like to do for fun?
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me on. It's such an honor. I was watching all of your episodes and I was just immediately fell in love with this podcast. So really excited to be on. So my name's Lina Deatherage. I'm a technical analyst for a software company. And my role really consists, it's kind of like adjacent to QA, I would say. So I work with testers all day long and I help implement our software, which is a testing tool and a data management tool inside of organizations. So I go from the very beginning to the end where we start talking about the challenges they face and how we might be able to solve it, all the way through closing that sale and then onboarding and training. So I do quite a lot of things that are like around the world of tests, but I myself am not a tester. And yeah, I guess in terms of things outside of work that I really enjoy, I am a painter. So I do oil painting a lot. I
Oh,
also do ballet. So I'm quite
Cool.
like, I guess, creative oriented. But yeah, that's like what I went to school for, and I'm very passionate about it.
oh wow. That's such a yeah. Like I don't think we've ever had someone who did ballet like as part of our previous episodes. How did you end up in tech?
Interesting sideways journey
Yeah.
into it. So I got hired by the same company to do project management and operations. So that was my background. I was kind of always interested in tech, but because I went to school for painting and for psychology, so I was like
Mm.
completely different, very much humanitarian oriented. But once I graduated, I was thinking about all the things that, maybe I can use problem solving skills for, and it led me into project management. And ultimately, I started working at this company and I was managing software projects. So I started to learn a little bit more about tech that way. And from there, I just got an opportunity really where, because we're such a small team, we were kind of a startup back then, where they were like, hey, would you maybe be interested in being a bit more like customer facing? Do you want to work with actual testers? And I was like, yeah, that sounds really fun. And then lo and behold, like a year later, kind of like straight into the world of tech. But it's been really fun. I never imagined myself being in this field, but it's been so rewarding and I really enjoy what I do day to day.
That's
Wow.
very unusual to have such different, things that you're interested in.
Yeah.
I imagine it must be quite a switch to go from tech to ballet. I mean, do you still dance?
I do. I haven't since I moved here about a year ago. I had
Mm.
one ballet studio I really liked back home. And I haven't been able to quite find the right fit just yet. But
Mm.
yeah, definitely. I still want to. And I still like very much partake in like my creative pursuits. I feel like it's kind of interesting. I like spend all day doing like tech related things, and then in my free time I like to do maybe more creative things.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like those are two separate worlds. Maybe I had a misconception before where it's like, oh, you kind of are interested in like one category or the other. But I don't know. I think there's quite a bit of like overlap between those two things.
Yeah. But I think what I'm hearing is Oxford needs a better ballet studio.
They do. They need one
Yeah.
for adult ballet
Oh,
that
yeah.
isn't like professional, because I am nowhere near that good. Somewhere
Yeah.
between like, I can keep up with the toddlers, the 5-year-olds, but I'm not like quite professional yet.
Yeah.
That level would be great.
Yeah. So anyway, Lina, a question that we like to ask our guests, and you might know this already because the name of our show is Adobo and Avocados, adobo being the unofficial national dish of the Philippines. So whenever we think of adobo, Nicole and I are just reminded of being at home because we haven't been home for quite, it's like such a long time. And it's basically like a way of cooking. It could be meat, vegetables, or it could be anything. And the idea is you cook it with vinegar, garlic, soy sauce, like all the good stuff. So whenever we hear adobo, it just reminds us of home. It reminds us of the Philippines. So from your case, because you shared with us before the stream that you are from Los Angeles originally, and now you live in Oxford. What reminds you of home? It could be food, it could be non-food related as well.
Yeah, I feel like for me, home is very much related to people now. Just because I live so far away, and then my family also doesn't live in the States either. Like half of them are back in Japan. So I don't get to see them super often. If I do, it's like an 8-hour flight each stop. So I feel like for me, adobo is kind of just the people that I can pick up a phone call with, and it feels like I never really strayed. So I feel like my best friend, who she's from the Philippines as well, and she was, yeah, I have phone calls with her all the time. It just feels like we aren't thousands of miles apart. And I feel so lucky because I grew up with her and she would always feed me like adobo and all the great food. So I feel like
Oh,
blessed. I feel like that also reminds me of home now too.
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Again, that's really amazing to hear. And have you tried other like Filipino foods as well, or
I have. I
you
feel like
have?
I've tried so much at this point. I
Oh,
feel bad because
nice.
I don't know a lot of the names, because she'll just be like, eat
Yeah.
this." And I'm like, "Yes, of course." But
Yeah.
I love everything. I really like lumpia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Party
oh, I just
favorite.
got hungry just then. I
Yeah.
haven't eaten yet.
Happen. It's funny because the past 2 days I've been craving turon. I don't know if you've had turon,
Mm.
Lina, but it's basically this
Sure.
um plantain, but so it's like lumpia, but instead of meat, it's plantain. It's more of a sweet version, and it's caramelized. And the past 2 days, I've been craving that, and I've been trying to get it. But every time I try to order it
Oh.
from Deliveroo, they're always like this. So this food stall. There's a Filipino food stall where I live, and it's always out of stock. So it's
Oh,
annoying, but hopefully this week I can get some.
yes, soon. They need to have alerts for when it's available again.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be the first one to get that. But yeah, really good, to hear all of that. I guess just to move on, we would like, I guess, you briefly introduced like your career background. Um and you said that you studied, was it psychology and painting as well? So when you were first working, did you work in those fields, like in the psychology field or in the arts field, or did you jump like straight to project management and then tech? Could you tell us a bit more, I guess, about your career background in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I first started school and you're like 17, fresh out of high school, and they're like, what would you like to do? I wanted to do art therapy because I've always been interested in art. I really wanted to do something that can work with people and help people. So I went down this whole path where I dual majored and I was like, okay, once I graduate, this is what I'm going to do. But I just got to a point where I wanted a little bit of a break from school and I just wanted to get some real world experience because otherwise I'd be in school for another 5 years. And I was like, I just cannot right now. So I went and I first did project managing for a screenwriting company. They wanted someone who was kind of like a creative person who understood like how to work with writers and just producers. And I was really like enjoying that for a little bit. And then I just decided it wasn't quite the right fit. And I landed project managing for a toy company. So we used to make these remote control cars. If you go to Costco, you can still see the ones that we worked on together. So I was like kind of managing a manufacturing process from end to end. And I ended up really enjoying that. I thought it was really rewarding getting to like build a product. And I think that's kind of why I enjoy working in tech too, because you get to see products. They're just maybe not so much physical. And after that, I worked there for about 2 years, and then I wanted a bit of a change. And that's when I got hired by the company I currently work for, and eventually got a little bit more into the tech world. But yeah, I never ended up working in the field I studied for. And I actually think that's quite common. Once you get out of school, it's like, you got to find whichever opportunity fits best for you at the time. And it's not that I don't want to pursue it anymore, maybe in the future, but right now, like, this is a good fit.
Yeah. I think the saying as well when we were told as people who I think before when we finish our studies, like we're just always told that okay, this is the career path that you should take. But then there's a lot of options, and I think at that age it's okay to not figure out like where your next step is, and it's okay to also not work in the industry that I guess you are studying, because we've talked about this on like previous episodes, but like the skills that you've learned anyway, it can be transferable. And I've worked with amazing testers in the past who actually they actually have a psychology background, so they were able to utilize that skill and then apply that into their testing process. So I think there's still a lot of skills that can be transferable, whether you're transferring to different, like I guess, industries. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
completely
also,
agree.
like I just think it's so young to expect, like a 17 or 18-year-old to
Mm,
figure out what they're going to do for the rest of their lives.
yeah.
I was not there. I shifted majors like 5 or 6 times over 3 different countries. I had no clue, and I've never used any of it. One of them was psychology, by the way. You know what wasn't one of them is computer science. I did
Mm,
nothing tech related. And now I'm here. So
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's so common. When I talk to a lot of people that do like pre-sales or post-sales, almost none of them have a computer science degree. They almost always did like business, psychology, anything else, but not really in STEM, which I thought was like quite interesting. I had
yeah.
this misconception that to work in tech, you must have, I don't know, maybe a background in like math or computer science. You have to go to school for it, but it's so not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is a big one. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about how painting and ballet aren't in opposition to tech. And I totally agree. I think that when we think of art, usually people think of something that is just like beauty for beauty's sake. But I think that there's a beauty in an art to tech as well. I think tech can be just as creative and just as beautiful. I mean, sometimes, like, I don't know, the thing that I'm thinking of is Kubernetes, which I think I'm actually wearing a Kubernetes shirt. But like, Kubernetes is one of those things where I look at it and I'm like, that is nothing but a work of art. It's like, I don't know if you know the term tesseract, like it's from A Wrinkle in Time, the book. It's like this amazing bit of software that's really a tesseract of the way that we think. It's like it's mind-blowingly beautiful, and how can you not say that that's art? How can
Yeah.
you say that that's not creative?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I feel like creating software and testing it is actually really creative. Like you have to be able to think outside of like the black box, so to speak, and like try and find new ways of doing things. And someone has to design what the software looks like. Someone has to come up with that idea. Like you're totally right, Nicole. I think there's so much art inside of the process, but maybe it
Yeah.
gets a bit looked over. And one of my managers always talks about like the art of software testing. He's like, yes, you can like do everything right, but there is an art to like really good testers that like they kind of
Yeah.
have mastered.
Oh, this is making me smile because so I haven't shared this a while ago, but tomorrow I'm actually speaking at my daughter's school because they're looking for parents who work in STEM. And the
Ah,
challenge that I have is I have to explain to them what I do. And these kids are like 6 to 7, years old. So I was making the slides yesterday, and because a big chunk of I think in terms of our work now and what I studied, I did a lot of programming. And so the teacher asked me, oh, can you sort of explain programming or coding to kids? And I'm like, okay, yep, I can do that. And I'm so used to explaining it like when we do meetups or conferences, but then this time it's a different audience. And one of the slide that I have is it's like programming, it's like an art. It's about creating things. It's about solving problems. It's about challenges. And then I've got all these nice pictures of like kids like building blocks or kids being creative. So it's such a good way to also say that, yeah, in our job, there's a lot of creative aspects to it. Especially with testing as well. There's a whole side of creative testing where we do things like exploratory testing, or we also need to think outside the box, because if we just follow what the requirements are saying and we don't really, I guess, test for the other possibilities, then it's gonna be a boring job. Let's let's be honest. So it's up to us to make it as creative as possible. And I think the more creative that we get, the better software we produce, the better software we can provide to our users, because we can think of like all the different scenarios. So yeah, I just wanted to share that yeah, tomorrow I'm gonna be linking technology, or programming or tech in general, to being like an art.
Oh, that's amazing. Best of
Yeah.
luck. Not that you need it, but
Yeah,
I
my
think that's
daughter
so
asked me
cool.
this morning, have you practiced already? I said not yet, but later I will practice. Yeah,
And that's
she's
so
like,
great
"Don't
that
let
you're
me down, mom."
introducing it.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's such a young age to be introduced to tech. Like maybe
Yeah.
it's a little bit different for like our generation because it wasn't as much of a thing back then. But like to be
Mhm.
6 or 7 and like have your parents working in tech or to just know about developing, I think that's such a
Yeah.
head start. Because I still have it to this day where like I none of my other friends are in tech. And they're like, so what exactly do you do? Like, what's your job? And I'm like, well, you know, I help sell tech and then we also make tech, but the tech tests other tech. They're like,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
say I work in IT. Just like
Yeah.
even my own parents, they still get
Yeah.
confused like what I do.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the problem too. And we're going back to like the career choice at
Mhm.
17 or whatever. When we are told about tech, it's like, oh, development. Like
Yeah.
that's the only thing. It's like, oh, if you want to go into medicine, well, oh, you want to be a doctor. It's like, well,
Mhm.
you can, but there's so much more. And all three of us work in adjacent fields to development. Like that is not the core functionality that we perform. And I feel like it would be so much better if at the beginning I had been taught like, oh, here's
Mhm.
this is huge industry called tech. One small part of that is being a software developer, but here
Yeah.
are all these other roles that you can kind of mix and match what bits you want to do in your daily job. And I just was not exposed to that. I thought like tech is development and that's it. And I
Yeah.
also had a very narrow view of development. I thought, like, oh, being a programmer means just working with a computer all day and not talking to people. And, obviously that's like, that's not what it is, but I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think it's
Right.
these misconceptions that a lot of younger generations might have, and I guess the earlier we can talk about it with them, the earlier they can clear up any of these misconceptions, because maybe some kids or some young adults, they do want to have a career, but then in their head, like you said, Nicole, they might think it's just all about development. But what's great is, I think in this episode we can talk about like what other career roles are there in tech, because Lina, I think with you, because you shared that you help in terms of like the pre-sales, so you help um I guess in selling a product or a software, and then in terms of seeing that process through, like you try to help with any of their pain points, but maybe not a lot of people know that that sort of role exists, or they might have an idea, but they're not too sure as to what it is. So maybe you can, yeah, talk more about what that is. Like, how is that different to, let's say, software development or testing? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I had no idea that this role existed. I was like, okay, there's salespeople and then there's developers. And I would say pre-sales is somewhere in the middle where we have more technical skills than maybe the salesperson does in terms of we're hands-on with the software and we're like helping to actually achieve, like in my case, it's the test cases that we're creating for our customers. But at the same time, our goal is to prove a business value. So we need to be a little bit more tuned into, okay, but why do these test cases matter? What's the actual quality of the software we're measuring? So it's really fun. I get to work with kind of everyone across the team. So usually it's a couple of people in QA. There's sometimes a business analyst involved. So it's really kind of a versatile role. I would say it's a really great fit for someone who enjoys being customer facing and like speaking, working with people, maybe like not being completely alone on a computer all day, but you're still interested in maybe programming or not
Mhm.
even that, just technology in general. I think I've always had a bit of a soft spot for tech. And I didn't quite realize it until I started working in it. But I'm like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. And I'm really passionate about certain pieces of software that I just use in my personal life. I'm like, everyone needs to use this. It's life changing. Like, please go try it out. And I
Mhm.
think that kind of advocacy and passion is really great when you're trying to advocate for a piece of software that you happen to be selling. I think selling gets kind of a bad reputation. It's really about
Yeah.
like, it doesn't sound like great in my opinion. But really
Yeah.
what you're doing is kind of just seeing if it's a right fit, if it's something that will genuinely help them. If it's not going to genuinely help, then it's not a good fit for either of us. So I think
Yeah.
it's really just about like helping people all day long, which is really great. And that's like what I wanted to do eventually out of school anyways.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think we've had some episode where, I mean, this is specifically with the developer advocacy side of things, because there's been some misconceptions that we're like salespeople, but we're really not. What we try to do is we try to help the community, we try to understand their pain points, and we try to share what we learn. And I think in most of the users, so especially if we're catering to software developers or testers, I think they're much more inclined to speak to people like developer advocates. But it doesn't mean that salespeople are less important. They probably just do a different type of job. So it's great that, yeah, we've talked about that. So with your role, because you mentioned pre-sales, so do you still end up trying to sell the software, or it's mostly handed into a different person? Like, once you've figured out if the tool is the right fit for them, do you stop and then move to a different customer, or do you still see the whole process through?
So it kind of depends on the, I would say, like the size of the company you work for. So typically it does stop there where you kind of see through the sales process, you prove the business value through some sort of proof of concept, and then you hand over traditionally to some sort of a CSM or post sales person. At my company, we do see the whole process even afterwards. So oftentimes the customer that we were working with in the initial part of the sales cycle where we're talking to them and helping them prove value, I also work with them every single day if they process through and end up with our software. So I actually really like that approach because I feel like I really know the customers I work with and I know exactly how we're helping them, what they want to achieve in the future. It's really rewarding just working with the same people. It's almost like you kind of work in their company as well because their success is also your success. But traditionally it's handed off to another person, which is also kind of like a whole nother world of roles I feel like you wouldn't really know unless you already worked in tech, such as like a customer success manager or some sort of implementation person.
I think the difference in the roles is a positive thing on the sales and adoption side. Like Marie and I are earlier in the funnel, I guess. I don't like thinking of it as a funnel, but we operate way earlier where we're not even thinking about sales. We're not even thinking about customers at all. We're thinking about users. And we're like, hey, isn't this thing cool? And I think that's actually a good thing that there are so many delineations where there's adoption and then there's pre-sales and then there's sales and then post-sales and solutions engineering and all that, because I think it speaks a lot about the empathy that we have
Mm-hmm.
for different people who maybe don't want to buy anything. Maybe they just want a proof of concept,
Yeah.
or maybe they're just curious about this thing that you're
Yeah.
doing. And I think that's really positive instead of just being like, hey, here's this thing, buy it now.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
it's very full on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think too, it's, you know, when everything's the right fit, and it's completely okay if people just want to come and talk to us. That's totally okay too. Like we're just here to really spark up a conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes it's really fun. It's just kind of learning what they do. It's like, oh, how do you test here? And like, what do you guys prefer to do? What's your method?
Yeah.
And I think it's always interesting too, hearing from all kind of the entire life cycle of software development. So since you both work in a role that's a bit ahead of mine, I see the fruits of what you guys work on. Like I wouldn't be able to do what I do without you. And it's all kind of this whole circle where you can kind of pick and choose maybe which part is most interesting to you and find a really good career in it. It's not just that
Yeah.
little piece of development.
Yeah. I did like what you said a while ago, that you try to talk about the business value, because I guess an important part of like the pre-sales process is because you're trying to see if the product that you're trying to get them to try is a perfect fit. But before you can even do that, you need to understand like what their problems are, and if there's any value that's gonna be provided to them if they try out the software. Because I think um so my partner, he works as an account executive, so he does the whole sales process. And I think what I learned from him doing all the different like sales conversations, demos, is it's much better to sell the product value rather than the product itself, because I think once you've sold the value to the business, then it's much more easier to, I guess, convince the different users that are gonna try that product. Whereas I think if you start with the product first and then you demo the product without understanding, like, is this actually gonna fix your problem? Then probably the initial users or the people that you first speak with, they won't probably continue with the whole like the sales cycle maturity or something like that.
Yeah, completely spot on, which is something I think I didn't really know about sales when I first started in it, where it's ultimately about the value that you provide, maybe not even so much the product, because products change so much. You know, you
Yeah.
can have a new feature and then it's outdated in 3 months, and now everyone wants AI, but what is AI? Is it different from machine learning? Like it's always this like malleable thing versus what you're trying to maybe achieve by implementing AI or whatever feature, that's actually what the business is after. And oftentimes that will speak to everyone. And maybe if oftentimes the final person who signs off on a piece of software is someone who's not really into tech, because every company is a tech company now. There's
Mm.
always, everyone has an app, everyone has something, but oftentimes the person like the CFO, for example, they don't really know what's going on day to day in the tech world. They don't know about testing. So they
Mm.
respond a little bit more to the actual business value and outcomes that you can provide. But ultimately it goes back into the product. So it's kind of like a chicken and egg situation. It's like we need the features in order to sell it, but also this is why we're wanting to promote this idea and seeing if it's a good fit, essentially.
I think it's also all about providing different levels of context because tech is difficult. It's so broad. And like Marie and I work for Grafana Labs. So if we said, oh, our company sells an end-to-end observability platform that lets you do everything from performance testing to incident response management, people are like, wait, what? You just
Yeah.
said a whole bunch of things that I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like,
A lot of
what are all
buzzwords.
these words? So you can't start with that. And
Yeah.
it's also it assumes a lot of things. It assumes the kind of problems that you have in
Yeah.
the day-to-day life. And so you have to really start way earlier, and that conversation can't start with here's the product. The
Yeah.
conversation has to start with what are you even doing, and why, what are some better ways to do it, and it has to be conceptual at the beginning, and then it gets slowly firmer and firmer, and it's like, okay, well, here's the problem, here's the solution, here are some other solutions, here's how we do it, and I really like that the way that you think of it is providing the value, because it shouldn't be, I think a lot of people in tech are like, yeah, okay, but I don't really care about any of that. I just want to know how it'll make my life better. So don't tell me about the bottom line. Tell me
Mm.
why I should care.
Definitely. I think you're so spot on about the assumptions. And even just on like a personal level, if you're trying to get into tech, it's really, from my point of view, is really challenging because there were so many assumptions made from the
Mm.
fact that like you maybe probably have already seen code in your life. And I hadn't. I was like, what is this? What is
Yeah.
an IDE?
Mm.
Versus also just like, what is testing? How do you actually test software? Is it just making sure it's up and running? Like, what is DevOps? People would always like throw around terms in meetings. I would be like jotting all of them down and like going through a dictionary
Mm.
online trying to like figure out what everything meant because it was like a foreign language at
Yeah.
the beginning where I like didn't understand anything. And it took definitely a bit of time. I would say like a good 2 years until I'm like, okay, I can kind of like stand my ground and talk about anything that would come up in a maybe a demo or a traditional meeting. But I don't know, there's sort of this, I guess I had this expectation that everyone in tech knows everything. They are masters of everything related to computer science, but usually people are kind of like, masters at one specific thing and they know a lot about maybe something specific inside of testing and not so much about another topic. So it's kind of reassuring to know you don't have to know absolutely everything to get started, and there's never an expectation to know absolutely everything.
Yeah. And I think this is something that we need to speak out more because it's probably one of the many reasons why not a lot of people are trying to, I guess, get into tech, especially women and minority groups, because they probably already have that expectation that, oh my gosh, I need to learn coding. So they try to learn coding first, and then they find that it's difficult, and then they give up, and then eventually they, not work, they don't work in tech. So I think we can all probably do better in trying to make tech less overwhelming. And one way that I like to do this is, um, there's some sort of like situations where I have to learn something new and I have absolutely no idea like anything about that particular topic. But then once I've learned it, once I've done some some like play around with this particular tool. And then I'm like, okay, it's actually not that difficult. And I'm a senior developer advocate, and I still don't know a lot of things. So I think that's okay to share to people that I can make content about this particular topic, but it's gonna come from a very beginner friendly side of things. Whereas I think some people, they expect you to just have a content, and it has to be advanced, it has to be like really on an expert level, and that's not always the case. So we want to make it as beginner friendly as possible. But I'm curious, like, to know. So from your side, Nicole, and Lina as well, what are other things that we can try and do to, I don't know, try and make tech less overwhelming to people who already have these set of assumptions?
Well, I
I
think
feel like,
I
oh, sorry, Nicole, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say I kind of talked about not assuming context is a big thing, and Lena was saying that when she got started in tech, there were so many words that she had to write down, and I totally agree. I still do that, like
Me too.
even in
Not
areas
past
where I
tense.
feel like this is my bread and butter. I've spent more than a
Yeah.
decade on performance testing. Someone will say something, I'm like,
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah.
What what is that a language? Is that a framework? Is that a way of testing? Like I don't even know. And that
Yeah.
happens all the time. And I think we don't talk about that much. That like, hey, being in tech actually means not knowing a whole lot of things and having to be okay with that. Because if you're not okay with that, this might not be the industry for you because you're going to be faced with that a lot. And if you take that seriously and you think like, oh well, that says something about my worth as a person, as a productive member of society, then it's like, okay, this shouldn't be what you go into, because you're always faced with that uncertainty and ignorance, and you just have to learn to just like be open about it and just get stuff done anyway.
I could not agree more, and you said it so perfectly. It's the constant not knowing, which I really took it to heart when I first started. So I think that would be so important to just talk about a bit more openly, and to see it as like a positive thing where you can constantly learn about a new thing, like all the time. It's always evolving. But also not to take it to heart. It's not a personal failure if you show up to a meeting and they're talking about, this new piece of technology that you have no idea about. It's just going to happen, and you can ask questions about it, and
Mm.
everything's just this new learning experience. And I think, Nicole, I heard you say on one of the previous podcasts, it's learning in public. And I just love that because it's so true. And people will not, I think I sort of thought it would be a negative thing. People will be like, oh, well, she doesn't know what she's talking about. But really, I
Mhm.
think people are like, oh, that's cool. I'm glad you're like taking time to learn about the thing that I'm using so you can help. They view it as a nice gesture when you ask a lot of questions versus maybe seeing it as, oh, well, she doesn't know anything about it. And I
Mm.
think if we just normalize that a little bit and normalize the fact that you're always learning, and it's a good thing, it's not a personal failure, and
Yeah.
it's not lack of preparation. I think that's what I very much felt like in the early days, where it's like, oh, I should have spent more time on YouTube looking up this thing. I should have spent more time reading about it. But you don't need to do like so much preparation. A lot of it is going to be on the spot, and you kind of have to be okay with that.
Yeah. We got a comment here from Paul as well. So he said, it's true, tech is a very humbling industry. There is much more in our field we don't know than we do, and we have to be comfortable with that. This is exactly true. I completely agree. I was updating the documentation yesterday for one of the panels that we having in Grafana. And I was really happy that one of the developers commented on my pull request, made some suggestions, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know about that. And it's like, when you learn something, and it's like last week, I didn't even know that, this particular like visualization can do this, and then this week now I do. There's just such a like a happy feeling when you finally when you're in that stage when you're like, oh, but last week I was so clueless about this particular thing, and then this week I'm in that stage now where, okay, the documentation looks great, it looks very beginner friendly, now I can create a video. And there's just such a big massive difference. Like my state last week was like, oh my god, I didn't know about this, like now I have to talk about it. And then just really taking my time to read, to play around with it, and to ask people who know more than me. I think that is, very humbling, and that's what we need to be comfortable in doing. Because if you just try to, I guess, pretend that you know everything, and then that you're gonna find out the information yourself, you're gonna get burned out. And it's not a nice feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we want to help people have long-lasting careers in tech, I think it's important to say, like, you don't have to put up this facade of pretending to know everything, which is
Yeah.
really exhausting. It's like, just be yourself and know that you are contributing, I mean, to go back to a sales term, business value, just by trying your best and like being willing to learn. And also too, it's, I think when we would talk about like things being humbling, it's like, oh well, it's going to be an uphill struggle the whole time, but actually it's like quite fun. And I think that's also another thing that we can like highlight, especially maybe to women, where it's like we don't know what the fun sides are just yet because we're
Mm.
so stuck in the weeds trying to learn how to code for the first time. But I'm just wondering if there was like a moment for you guys where it was like, oh wow, I made this thing and it's really cool, and I feel like I advanced a little bit in like my understanding of tech. I had one recently where I finally wrote a full web UI test in Java Selenium, and like by myself I did a little bit of coding. I was like, wow, a year ago I didn't even know like any of this, and I finally got it to work, and I was like, ah, it was all
Wow.
worth it. But I'm just curious if you guys have any moments like that. Like, I think it's good to share the successes as
Yeah.
well.
Um, do you want to start, Nicole, or yeah?
You can go.
You can go. I have couple in my mind. So one very recent, I actually created this video on how to display some Grafana alerts like in your dashboards, and I got really positive feedback. And this was something completely new to me. I spent a lot of time trying to learn about it, and just hearing that positive feedback from your team, from people who've actually seen the work that you've done, it's quite uplifting, because now I can then do more videos, I can then do more and more updates. So it's sort of helping me with, I guess, the confidence that I need as well. And I guess the other one, um maybe I think it should be okay to share now. So um, I've been writing a book about contract testing.
Oh,
And so I've been doing this with a co-author, and we're almost finished. And we got the second round of reviews, and it's so positive. Like, we got excellent feedback. We've got about 10 chapters in, and so we're really really close. And that's just one thing, that because it's always been in my bucket list to write a book, and I think it's gonna happen this year. So that's quite, yeah, a massive thing for me, because when I look back to it, I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. Oh my gosh, I've written this. And it's just such a good feeling. So yeah, really happy to share that.
it's amazing. Congratulations. I know that must have taken so much like love and hard work to do. I'm
Yeah.
really excited to read
Lots
it.
of late nights. Yeah.
As soon as it
Yeah,
comes out, let me know. I'll read it for
definitely.
sure.
Yeah. How about you, Nicole?
I think similar to you, I've been working on this video, and it's about an overview of like kind of the whole landscape of things that we make, the projects that we make at Grafana, and it's been harder than I thought. I thought it was going to be easy to just talk about each project in detail, but I'm like, oh no, it's actually really difficult to explain why you need these things and how they fit in together. And there's been quite a lot of learning in it for me. And it's really humbling to like approach the developers and be like, don't actually know what you do or why. Like, why do you need to do this? Why couldn't we just do this thing? And it's like it's a lot. It's a lot to have to admit that, but I am learning a lot. And it does make me really excited because I'm finally seeing the big picture of everything that we're doing. And it's, I hope it'll be useful for other people, but it's also personally useful is I'm understanding a bigger picture of the entire process than what I personally have been involved in.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It's
I feel like,
actually inspiring. That
yeah, very inspiring.
yeah, because I think the video that you're gonna create, Nicole, that's not only gonna be helpful to you. I know it's gonna be helpful to me because I still don't know a lot about Grafana Labs. Like I know the basics, and there's so many products out there, and I think having an overview of these different products, like we create this for our users, but also we're the users as well. So I think it's definitely gonna be helpful. Um, but I guess the next sort of topic that I want to address is in terms of embracing or seizing all these different opportunities. Um, what can one, I guess, like what can they do to try and just embrace like all these different changes and then not be scared of the different opportunities that might actually come to them, because we've talked a lot about tech being a very overwhelming industry, so there's probably a lot of opportunities there that a lot of people are not acknowledging, or they're just like passing it, like in like they're just like what's that term, like they're just neglecting them or something like that. But what can like we share with them in case there's some people out there who wants to you know seize the different opportunities or jump to a different field, to a different part in tech, or I guess in just general, like how can we help them try to be more confident in embracing all these different opportunities in tech.
Yeah, I still feel like I'm learning it myself. I guess I can speak in terms of like how I jumped positions, and it was very much this willingness. I would say it's a balance between being proactive and then also willingness to kind of be humbled, and humbled in a good way where it's like, okay, I am going to like be gentle with myself. I'm learning a new thing. I'm not going to put a lot of pressure, but at the same
Mhm.
time, if something comes up that I want to do, I have to go for it. I can't have that second doubting of like, oh, can I actually do this? Am I capable of learning, like, let's say, a new programming language? And instead of kind of doubting yourself, it's, in my opinion, a bit more productive to say, okay, I don't know how to do that, but I can do it in the future. I can.
Yeah.
You just have to kind of have that belief in yourself. And I feel like that carries you really far. So, for example, when I first transitioned over, I actually went to the United Kingdom to get my training, and it was like roughly 8 weeks long, and it was really hard for me. I was having the time of my life being in the abroad for the first time, and it was so cool and I loved it, but at the same time I was like, wow, there's a lot I need to learn. What do I do? And I wish I could kind of go back in time and just say, like, you don't have to learn everything in 8 weeks. Like, it is forever a learning process, and the fact that you took the chance to go and get trained and to go try a new role is enough. Just believing in yourself enough to go try it out, and you never know where it's going to lead to. Where I feel like that was probably the best choice. I know it's the best choice I ever made in my career, because it ultimately ended up with me moving abroad permanently, and I travel to all of these different places to work with people. It's just like a dream position that I didn't even know existed. And I think it's just this willingness to try something new, even knowing that you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to show up perfect, and that's okay, but you just have to show up and try.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's a lot of um tips that we can share, but that's probably one of the best one out there. It's just we just need to try. And have that experimental mindset as well, where we should be okay to try out new things, and if it doesn't work, then that's okay. We can try something else that we would probably enjoy. But like, it's not an excuse to just be, I guess, stuck in something that um it's not really giving you that much value. Like, if we talk about that whole business value again, like, you can't just be stuck in doing something that you don't like. It has to really be something that eventually you're gonna enjoy, because um I think that's really important, because when you're in a role where you're just continuously trying to grab all these different opportunities, that can lead you to learn more about yourself as well, and that can continuously improve your learning process. And I think what we like to share in all the episodes that we have is the learning aspect is much better, because the way you learn, like, we're always going to continuously just find out about some new technology or new programming language, and just learning about those. I think, yeah, that's really what makes the big difference, and you should be okay to be uncomfortable
Yeah.
learning it. Yeah.
And maybe seeing too that there's both positives along with that, along with the challenges, or it's like it's going to be fun when you complete your first project. Like, hands down, it's going to be so satisfying, and you'll keep having those feelings of satisfaction as you get more and more advanced in your technical knowledge. And also just knowing like you're not really ever starting completely from scratch. So like Maria, I think you mentioned at the beginning, like you carry over skills from like your previous lifetimes. Like it's not like you're starting from zero. You're always taking whatever you've already learned and just kind of building on top of it. So I think that helps to make it a little bit less intimidating and to just make it a little bit more open for everyone to join. Because there's so much opportunities in tech too. It's just always a growing field, and there's just so many things you can do with it.
Yeah. We have another comment here from Bogus. I think this is true. I think, yeah, part of the problem is LinkedIn and other tech social media. Lots of tech people who boast their achievements and sound like gurus all the time. Yeah, I think this can definitely contribute to a person feeling that what they've learned is not enough, because then you're always seeing, like, oh my gosh, this person posted this or this person did this. But we should just stop comparing what we've done to other people. We should just compare what we've done, let's say, last week, or let's say last year. You didn't know about this, but then this year you've done a lot of learning. So it's hard, but I think, yeah, this is just something that we just need to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious if you guys think that having like a community where we openly talk about things like this helps. Because I feel like that's kind of the other flip side of LinkedIn, where you do see a lot of boasting about personal achievements, but sometimes I'll scroll through mine and it'll be someone in tech, oftentimes like a woman in tech post because of the things I follow. And they're talking about, all the things they've had to overcome and everyone who helped them along the way, and just kind of knowing you're not alone, and that there's other people who are also on the same journey with you, and you can like collectively support each other. I kind of feel like that's really the number one thing for getting maybe more opportunities down your path, but also being successful in those opportunities, is knowing you have help.
Yeah. I think I can't like understate that enough. Like, having a community that you can relate with, it's really important. And it's really good because most of our guests as well in the past have also highlighted the importance of community, helping them grow, helping them, I guess, like, just manage with the day-to-day stuff that, like, they'd have to deal with. Because um maybe we see it less, but I think from other, and I don't want to speak, to like everyone, but I think there's still some situations where we face struggles being women in tech, where we had to um just, I guess, jump on like hurdles and just be able to prove ourselves because we feel like we have to in order to compete with the rest. And having a community that can also support you, and it feels like you can also share with them like, oh, I'm frustrated with this, or this has happened, and then they sort of, I guess, uplift you. And that's such a happy feeling. So I can't, like, I honestly recommend like having a community back you up, especially if you're just starting in in your tech career. Yeah, what do you think, Nicole?
Yeah, I think it's essential. I think for many things. I think tech is already difficult to begin with. There's so many different facets of it that it's almost impossible for you not to stand on the shoulders of giants, whether ones that have gone before us or ones that are still there now. And then there's also the part of it where it can be very isolating because we're using technology as a filter between us and the world. And if you don't go and seek opportunities to use that technology to be with other people, then it's just going to be a very lonely job, especially if you happen to be part of a minority group. So, yeah, I think having some sort of community is essential. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Lina, we have 5 minutes, and I know you've shared great tips already. But one thing that we love to ask our guests is if there's one piece of advice that you would like to give, if there's any more that you would like to give to anyone who wants to have a career in tech, what would that be?
I think honestly, the best advice I can give is give it a shot. Just try it, and
Mm.
you'll know within a year how you feel about it. You'll see your growth. Try not to get too discouraged when you have setbacks. It's completely normal. One thing I wish someone had told me is the first time you write code and you compile and try to run it, it's not going to work. Because that was like a terrifying moment for me where I was like, oh no. And it's kind of like that when you're learning something. The first few times you're going to try it, it might not work out, and that's okay. That's a normal, expected part of the process. It's normal to try really, really hard. And, sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't, but it'll be so rewarding. And you'll always, I think, look back fondly on the fact that you at least tried, even if it's out of your comfort zone. So, like for me personally, right now, I think speaking is a little bit out of my comfort zone. So I've been like trying to do like maybe podcasts, webinars, just things, just trying to talk a little bit more about what it's like to be in tech. So you can always just give it a try, honestly.
And you've done amazing today.
Oh,
Like,
thank you. I
you've been
appreciate it. You
really
guys are
great.
so easy to talk to.
Awesome. Well, I think next week, Nicole, you'll be in KubeCon, like you said. So
Yes.
we won't be around for next week. But the week after and the following weeks, we've got a pretty busy schedule. So we're going to be resuming the live stream after KubeCon next week. But yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation today, Lina. You were so easy, to talk to. And it's just fun because I think, like, even though this is the first time that we've all met, I felt like the conversation was just very natural, and we've got like a busy chat as well going on, which is always humbling. Because I think, Nicole, it's like we started this last year, and we were just chatting, hey, why don't we have a live stream? And now that we've finally done it, like, I'm just very happy that we've actually that we've actually created this, because if we haven't done this, we haven't met, like, like amazing people like you, Lina. So thank you.
Oh,
Thank you
thank you
both.
so much for having me on. It was so lovely getting to meet you both and talk with you. And yeah, just looking forward to staying connected in the future.
Nice. Well, awesome. That's it for today. Like I said, we won't be back next week, but the following week, we will be. So hopefully, you all found this episode useful. But yeah, right now we're gonna say goodbye. Thank you all, and bye
Thank you
bye.
so much, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bye.
everyone. Bye.